Hey, Ossilman here. I want to talk to you today about some concepts related to community transformation. You know, recently I went to a meeting in New York City, and a friend of mine told me that there are over 300 community transformation movements taking place in America. I was really shocked. I thought maybe 30 or 40. But what they were basically saying is that there's a grassroots movement where church leaders in cities are coming together and realizing if they're going to have impact, they've got to impact their cities and solve problems in their cities. And so in 2005, I was speaking in Red Deer, Canada, and I was speaking to about 1,500 people, and all of a sudden at the end of my talk, a woman who's known for her prophetic gifting and intercession came up, took the microphone out of my hand, and began to share with me what she felt God was saying to her, and that was that God was going to give me a model of community transformation that would be replicated around the world. It would begin in my own city and then replicated around the world. Well, I believe I have a pretty good understanding of what that model is, and the cities that I have seen that are, God is moving those cities, I find that these ingredients are in each of these cities that a significant move of God's taking place. So I wanted to share that with you in hopes that it might be useful for you if you're called to impact your city. This might be helpful in applying to your own situation. So I call this concept the transformation Trinity. And it's made up of three types of relationships in a city. The first are intercessors, okay? Intercessors are people who are called to pray. There are people who spend lots of time in prayer. There are people who pray list, but there are also intercessors who are called to intercede for the condition of their city. And I like to say, if you're thinking about, say, a war, you're always going to send the Air Force in first, and they're going to be able to prepare the soil for the ground troops to come in. And I like to think of the intercessors as the Air Force. And they're going to pray into the city and some of the strongholds over that city. And they're going to make it easier to be able to come and have impact in that city. The second group of people are church leaders. Church leaders or pastors or those that are connected to local congregations. We have a tremendous resource with local churches in a community. You've got a lot of volunteerism, and you've got the ground troops. I like to think of the local churches, the ground troops in taking on a war, if you will. And it's the war of love, though, for us. And so this, not every church leader has a passion for community transformation, though. If a pastor has the office of pastor, they're often more concerned with their sheep, and so they need a leadership team around them that would represent the fivefold gifting and offices that we need to be exercised in Ephesians. And so it's important that we recognize that these two groups are integral. Now, there's a third group that is very important, and that is the marketplace. The marketplace is made up of marketplace leaders like myself, who may be business owners or just people in the community. They have influence and they have the ability to get things done. They know what it means to work with others, and so that's why it's important that they be part of the process. And so when you combine all three of these groups of people, you have a dynamic group that can make great impact in the community. And what we found is these three groups of people need to be working together. They need to be praying together. And one of the things I discovered really through failure is that many times it's very difficult to get this activity going without an investment in the relationships before you go to any transactions. Now, all of this is nice, but it has no effect unless you do one thing, and that is solve problems. You see, what has to happen is this group of people needs to come together and leverage their individual and collective resources to go to the mayor and say, Mayor, what's your greatest 5 problems in our city, and how can we help? Now just imagine for a moment, if you had, 100 intercessors praying in your city, you had 100 or 500 churches, and the people that were part of that were beginning to do acts of kindness in your community. Maybe a couple times a year you do events where you adopt public schools or situations that need attention, and government just can't cover it all. And then you get the marketplace to be able to help bring to force some resources and to have influence in the city. But the key thing, and the reason that Jesus was so influential, was he solved problems. You see, he solved the problem for Peter when he had a fishing problem. He told him how to catch more fish. He had a tax problem. He told him, go catch a fish and there'll be a coin in the mouth. He told him how to feed 5,000 people. He saved the life of a prostitute. He healed many people. And so in each of these situations, you see what Jesus did was he solved a problem. And as a result of solving a problem, he gained influence. And that's why I believe that culture change is not a goal, but it's a fruit. It's a fruit of our relationship with God, by God using and working through us to serve and to solve problems. And so when you do that, you're going to see an automatic aspect of influence. You see, culture doesn't care who solves their problem. They just want their problem solved. And if you can be a catalyst to solve the problem, you're going to have influence.